From deadly triangle chokeholds to barbaric ground and pounds, the world of MMA has been taken over by those who know how to take their opponents into deep waters. Here are the greatest grapplers of all time, starting with Daniel DC Cormier. If you thought Cormier was nothing more than a UFC commentator and analyst, hello normie UFC fan, you can click off the video, cause we're in the big leagues here. Before walking into the UFC headquarters, DC was blazing it up in wrestling, which explains why he was just so solid with his grapple game. In high school, Daniel won 3 Louisiana state championships in wrestling and kept on dishing out some Olympic-grade performance each time he stepped into the circle. Through his MMA career, DC has scored a whopping 35 takedowns between the UFC and Strikeforce. It was baffling to see someone of his size absolutely humble larger fighters with his takedowns. Kinda reminded me of how I'd go backyard wrestling with my cousin Glenn. Hey, WWE was all the buzz back then. Anyways, Daniel's unrivaled wrestling prowess earned him the status of being only the second fighter in UFC history to hold titles in 2 weight classes. The only time he ever tasted the canvas from a takedown was against Jon Jones. And let's give him the benefit of the doubt here. That's Johnny Bones Jones. But his losses against Jon don't change how much of a menace he has been throughout his career. It's his incredible balance and experience that comes on full display each time he's in the octagon. You can just imagine a 19-year-old Cormier with a wrestling slinger when he's in action. And speaking of high-level takedowns, you can't not mention the granddaddy of all American wrestling, Randy Couture. Randy's entire persona embodied the proud, patriotic wrestler gimmick, and for good reason. If you didn't already know, Randy was a U.S. Army soldier, so you know wrestlers aren't the only opponents he likes to take down. Randy was a high school state champion, a 3-time NCAA All-American, and 6-time UFC World Champion. And I'm already out of breath. Where most fighters rely on their striking to make the kill, when Randy gets you in his mitts, he doesn't need a plan B. Just look at him. Now, those are the eyes of someone who will take no prisoners, except when it's in a vicious grapple. Whether it was smothering his opponents inside the circle or luring them into a dead end against the cage, Randy always stayed true to his fight style. Coming from an Army background, you can expect him to know how to get situations under control. And it really showed with his fight game. The man holds the record for the second most control and top position time in the heavyweight division. He also totals a scary 2 whole hours of control time if you account for his lightweight matches too. But don't get me wrong, if you think being bear hugged through the fight was the worst thing that could happen to you when facing Couture, you're in for a not so pleasant surprise. 10 of his finishes in his career were the result of some Class A ground and pound. Well, at least you'll have some honor being beaten up by a US veteran. But there is one fighter who probably won't care much about patriotism. Yep, we're heading to Chechen with Boris Khamzat Chimaev. If you want an idea of how much of a menace Khamzat is, think of Khabib Nurmagomedov, taken over by the Venom symbiote suit. I mean, his performance against Kevin Holland speaks for itself. As soon as the match started, Khamzat took off, going straight for the knees. Regular wrestlers, yeah, they grapple. But when Khamzat grapples, he's on the prowl, hunting for his prey. That's exactly what Kevin Holland looked like throughout the match. Chimaev ragdolled him for 2 minutes until Holland finally submitted to Khamzat's chokehold. My, oh my, was that uncomfortable to watch. Khamzat's aggressive holds and unorthodox fighting style are what makes him such a dangerous grappler. When he's caught you in his vice, he'll tighten up and do everything to stay on you until you gas out, like an anaconda wrapping itself around its opponent before devouring them. And that's not all. I mean, the man had the audacity of carrying Chinese fighter Li Yang over to UFC boss Dana White just to have a chat with him, only to say that he was the king. I swear this guy is an antagonist of an action movie, and we haven't even talked about his stats yet. The Chechen Nightmare is currently undefeated, with 12 fights with a perfect 100% takedown defense. The man is untouchable, and that's not all. He has a submission average of 3.5 tap-outs every 15 minutes. Though, if there is one other grappling deity in the UFC that even the bad boy Chechen respects, it's Johnny Bones Jones. When talking about the best of the best in any given fight style, best believe you'll find Jon Jones's name there. The man was just so versatile. When grappling, you really have to be careful when you're going in for a takedown, so you don't walk into a big hook from your opponent. Don't want to get Jose Aldo, do we? But Jon Jones, he doesn't have to worry about that. His fighter IQ is so good that he'll he'll invite you onto the canvas and you would have no idea what just happened. He holds an infamous undefeated streak of 26 wins, with the only loss being a disqualification. Yeah, the one time he lost was because he beat up his opponent a bit too violently. But back to grappling, Jon Jones didn't just know how to take his opponents down, he basically had Goku's Ultra Instinct, boasting a 95% takedown defense. Jon Jones has only spent 41 seconds in the bottom position his entire career. Get your mind out of the gutter. But with all that control, I don't think Jon is going to peacefully submit you to sleep. Oh no sir. What also makes him such a feared fighter is that he can be a monster when he has to. I'm talking about the famous Lyoto Machida submission that will give you chills. Jon lured Machida into the cage with some vicious knees to the body, only to catch him in an evil guillotine choke. Lyoto tried to hang in there with all he had, only to fall to the ground like the toys in Andy's room from Toy Story. But the only person to rival Johnny Bones is the Dagestanian Eagle, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Come on. Khabib sealed his opponent's fate when he began wrestling bears at just 9 years old. Ever since he was as little as Hezbollah, Khabib was surrounded by the best fighters in Dagestan. His playstyle is a deadly combination of judo and wrestling, which makes this humble sportsman an absolute demon when he's on top of his opponents. Seriously, most of his fights look more like a bear mauling, standing undefeated 28-0 with 61 total takedowns, 380 ground strikes landed, with all 7 of his UFC finishes executed with his opponents on the mat. What makes Khabib such a force to be reckoned with is his utter belief in himself. He makes cockiness sound like a respectable feat. I mean, you're pretty much allowed to if you've only lost 2 rounds in your entire career. Khabib to wrestling is what Lionel Messi is to football. How about that? Well, funnily enough, he knows how to score a goal or two. Probably his most iconic mauling was up against the notorious Conor McGregor, who he embarrassingly choked out in the dying minutes of the match. Conor looked like he was hanging on for dear life, and Khabib was taking him to deep waters. Hey, it's simple trash talk. Get smashed. And that is why I think Khabib Nurmagomedov is the greatest MMA grappler of all time.
Tavares tries to get a combination going, unable to find his range there, and Nurmagomedov floors him.
From Nurmagomedov there. Wow.
He's turning the corner. He's going to get it right here. This should be it. Michael should tap, or he's going to break his arm. He's going to break his arm.
Khabib Nurmagomedov moves to 24-0.
Nurmagomedov really dropping bombs now with those elbows.
And Tavares is all but out here. That'll do it. Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Horcher wants to make this a fight.
Well, Horcher's doing a very good job defending so far.
Khabib Nurmagomedov, 7-0 in the UFC.